Give me the cue. Buenas noches a todos. Empezamos la Junta de nuestro Distrito Escolar de Norristown. Good evening, everyone. We are about to start the board meeting for the Norristown Area School Board of Directors. Please be aware that the Norristown Area School Board of School Directors will be recording this meeting, and notice shall be placed of recording on the agenda. Notice of intent to record a meeting shall be given to the public before the start of each meeting, being recorded to avoid disruption of the meeting. The opinions expressed by any board members of the public do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Norristown Area School Board of School Directors and are solely those of the presenter. The Norristown Area School Board District hereby expressly disclaims any and all responsibility of liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public. Any unauthorized rebroadcasting of any video, audio, and or still image of this meeting is strictly forbidden without the written permission of the Norristown Area School Board of School Directors. Mr. Mayo, may I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Collins.
Here.
Mr. Daniels.
Here.
Mr. Howe.
Here.
Mrs. Mock.
Here.
Miss Novella.
Here.
Mrs. Ruiz.
Here.
Mrs. Worth.
Here.
Miss Parker.
Here.
Senor Jaramillo.
Aquí. All right, everyone, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have a moment of silence for Miss E. Pearl Smith.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so prior to jumping into public comment, I was notified by a former board member that another former board member, the Honorable Miss E. Pearl Smith, had passed away over the weekend. Miss Smith was a longtime board member. She was a longtime community advocate, well-respected in the community. Just thinking back to some of the first thoughts that I've shared of Miss Smith, she and I connected by way of the NAACP when I first got involved. She was always smiling when she saw me. She always encouraged me to get deeper involved with the organization. She loved seeing younger individuals like myself become active, become engaged, be the new wave, the new generation of change. When I had got on the board, she had also encouraged me to get more involved with PSBA and get more involved with professional development, things like that. And that she was proud to see my leadership on the board, especially as a Latino representing our various communities. So I'm just going to open it up to the floor for any other individuals to share thoughts, highlight your greatest memories.
Jeremy, if I may, what a loss for our community. Mrs. Smith was on the board that originally hired me as assistant superintendent 8 years ago. And just what an incredible, what a loss for Norristown, for somebody that, again, just so believed in the best of Norristown. And she was the best of Norristown in her just belief in our community. Always was uplifting others in her deeds and her words, and to this district, and her belief in our children and our families. Just every resident of Norristown was really her life in service to this school district, to this community. She was the founder of the original STEM committee that became the STEAM committee, and has now evolved into the great work that our Education and Technology Committee does. And that again was that was in place 10 years ago, I think, before STEM education was even a fad. And there was Pearl pushing us to make sure that we were providing the very best for our scholars. So it is with the deepest sympathy to her family, which has given so much to this district as well. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with Pearl and the entire Smith family. And we truly mourn her passing. Thank you, Senior Henry.
I would like to share, I never served on the board with her, but I came to board meetings and saw her here. But how I got to know her was with the Area 11 Democrats, because she was also a Democratic committee person, and she was very active with getting everybody involved. And she was involved with a group that she talked to me about business leaders. I think had a business that she ran, and she was still active with that until recent years. And she really wanted everyone to be successful. So we're going to miss her a lot.
All right. Transitioning to public comment. Mr. Dormer, do we have any individuals signed up for public comment today?
Senior Hermia, no one registered to make public comment, in the first session.
Not a problem. Thank you. We'll transition to the 1.5. Just want to make the board aware. Next week we will be requested to approve the previous meeting minutes. So take a look over that when you have some time prior to next Monday. Mr. Dormer, I will go ahead and transition the rest of the meeting to you for presentations and recognition.
Thank you, Senior Hermia. Good evening to members of our board, members of our wonderful administrative, professional support staff. Thank you to members of the Norristown Area School District Committee joining us in person and via Zoom this evening. We have two presentations tonight as part of our work session agenda. And we're going to start off highlighting the great things that go on as we do each month in our Norristown Area School District schools. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome Dr. Rachel Kirksey, who will present highlights from Whitehall Elementary School. Good evening, Dr. Kirksey.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to our board, cabinet, and of course, Mr. Dormer. My name is Dr. Rachel Kirksey, and I am the proud principal of Whitehall Elementary School. This evening, I'm here with my health and physical education teacher, Mr. Joel Paisley, who will be up shortly. And we're here to showcase some of the wonderful and amazing cooperative activities that take place in our physical education class at Whitehall Elementary School. Keep in mind that these PE classes include students who are in the general education program, gifted and talented program, English language program, learning support, and full-time autistic support. All of these student groups are together in our PE classes, and they receive common goals to achieve through cooperative activities. Together, they learn new skills and apply them alongside each other, and it's great to see this in action. They are learning skills such as problem solving, innovation, mathematics, memorizing, strategizing, and most of all, teamwork. These are all useful skills needed when joining the workforce, entrepreneurship, and even for those future jobs that have yet to be discovered. No matter what these jobs are, our students are receiving the necessary skills, concepts, and an application to prepare even in physical education classes. Here to speak a little bit more about our PE program and to show you some of it in action, here's Mr. Joel Paisley.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just follow up with what Dr. Kirksey had said. One of the trends in physical education the last few years is really pushing more involvement in cooperative activities, working together, communicating, listening. They're really good at communicating, but they're not always great at listening to the communication. So listening to each other is also part of this. So you will see a short video with 5 different activities, 3 activities for 3rd and 4th grade, and 2 activities for 1st and 2nd grade. And with the upper grade one, you will see the teamwork, the communication, the working together, taking turns, practicing different jobs within the activity. And then when we get to 1st and 2nd grade, you will see a real creative way of playing rock, paper, scissors, and that the students in 1st and 2nd grade are completely managing the activity themselves. Basically, I'm standing there with the camera, taking the video, they're managing, they're keeping track of who wins, who loses, when they tie. So we hope you enjoy this short little video that's going to begin with 4th graders bowling. So that's what I want to see.
So we invite you over to Whitehall anytime that you're in an area. You can stop by. You don't have to have an appointment, just stop by and you can see some more of the wonderful things we have going on. As you can see, we have a lot of creative things going on as well.
I
So thank you.
suggested to Mr. Daniels, it should be a board team building. Activity.
That's some fun.
Yeah.
For our.
We need somebody to lead it. We'll have him come. Yes, yes.
Mr. Parker is not a far walk from here.
I know.
No work this time.
We don't get paid anyway.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
that. Thank you, guys.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Listen, one small one. I know our fellow board director, Ms. Ruiz, is working on school visits. I think we may have some board members who signed up for Whitehall's visit. So be on the lookout for that, Dr. Kurtzy. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Senior Jaramillo. Just want to say thank you to Dr. Kersey, Mr. Paisley for your presentation tonight. And thank you for showing probably one of our learning areas that doesn't always get showcased. We know what an important part our special areas are in the entirety of our program, and particularly to our youngest learners at elementary. And I know we talk a lot about math and reading, but we in Norristown, we celebrate our arts, right? And usually that is the traditional art and music, but we shouldn't overlook the health and physical education piece. So thank you so much for showcasing that tonight. And again, the wonderful, not only physical activity that they're learning, but the cooperative skills, the communication skills, the life skills, the critical thinking skills that go on as part of our learning experiences every day. So thank you for the showcase of that as well tonight. We're going to move on to our second presentation. The month of March is Music in Our Schools Month, and we're very, very pleased to have Mrs. Vicki Bloom with us this evening on behalf of the music department, who is going to kick off our month-long celebration. Good evening, Mrs. Bloom.
Thank you. I just want to say that I saw a couple future bowlers. And as a bowling coach, I think maybe I want to see them in a few years. Yes. But good evening, school board members, family and friends. Happy Music in the School Month. This year's national theme is I See Music Education. On behalf of the entire Norristown Area School District Music Department, we are very honored to present this video to you so that you can see the outstanding opportunities our students have in music education. We also want to express our sincere gratitude to Ms. Jillian Williamson for visiting all of our classrooms and taking our videos and our pictures and putting them together for this video for you to see tonight. You will see how involved we are in our classrooms and also in the community with music education and our extracurricular activities as well. We also want to invite you for you to join us tomorrow night at the high school at 6:30 p.m. for our first String Fest concert. It's going, like I said, it's going to start at 6:30, and we're bringing all elementary school all the way through the high school students to play together and become as ensembles as one. So I leave you with the video. Please enjoy the video. We represented almost everyone that we could. And again, we hope to see you all tomorrow night at our first String Fest concert. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bloom. And again, we want to also share our sincerest thanks to Ms. Williamson.
Why does
for her-
Wi-Fi only seem to work in this
Give you
room?
a-
Do you need?
Board members, any questions or comments? Otherwise, if you don't already have it on your calendar, tomorrow night is our strength test at North Center High School. As Mrs. Bloom said, it will feature our elementary, middle, and high school for our first ever string festival. So thank you again, Mrs. Bloom. So if there's no other questions or comments, agenda item 3, report of the student representatives will be given at next week's regular voting meeting, as will agenda item number 4, the superintendent's report. That moves us to the bulk of tonight's meeting. Agenda item number 5, committee reports and recommendations of the superintendent. We'll start as we always do with 5.1, education and technology committee reports.
Oh, that's me.
Hi, Mr. Daniels.
Hi. Hi. Thanks. We had a rather short meeting the other night as most of us were headed over, some of us headed over to Fluxbus afterwards, and that was a great event. Dr. Molitor shared information about K-12 interventions that are used in the district special ed programs. We got an understanding of those interventions, the recommended duration, how they can legally be split, and those sorts of things, and the appropriate group size for each of the different kinds of resources, and some highlights around them. Under professional development, Dr. Richardson shared some highlights from last year's full professional development day. And if I recall, like in that, there were like over 70 sessions, right? And some of those were tracks that folks, because of their, the courses they teach, they had to attend those, and others were sort of opt-in. So it was pretty impressive to see the amount of PD learning tracks that were available there, right? So that was great. And then we had our discussion items. I had shared an article about a recent study that came out. I haven't made the board members aware of this. 98,000 students across 238 districts, looking at how tutoring is done in different districts and what types of tutoring are the most impactful. And I've asked the Ed and Tech, the members from admin on Ed and Tech to come back with some takeaways from that prior to our next meeting. I don't want to wait a month because we're sort of losing. I think we only have 3 more meetings this year. Right. So I've asked them to come back with some insights as we start to prepare our budget for next year. We need to have an understanding of how we might best fund and resource tutoring to augment our English language arts and the readings that we put together last year. I also asked that we examine our pay scale for paraprofessionals to ensure we're competitive, though I understand there are some contractual limitations around that. And Ms. Collins inquired about Central Monco Tech summer programming for middle school students. And then I think we were out of there. For those who were also in attendance, did I miss anything, Ms. Ruiz, Ms. Collins? No? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or comments from board members on our education and technology committee report?
I do have 2 questions. The first is actually uplifting someone else's question. I'm not sure, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but a member of the Ed and Tech committee, I believe, had asked some questions related to professional development. I'm not sure if they had a chance to connect with Dr. Richardson, as it seems like they may have. Dr. Richardson has touched on some professional development for the staff. Was that the case?
What was the question? I'm sorry. What was the question that was asked? Do we know?
Ms. Collins, I had suggested that you connected with Phil, or that you connect with Phil regarding your questions on PD, because you had some really great suggestions that you wanted to uplift.
I did, but after how comprehensive that great things are already.
Okay.
How they work professionally. The half days, wanting to learn more about the half, how training down.
Okay, good. Want to make sure that was uplifted. The second item, thank you, Mr. Daniels, for your advocacy in the Ed and Tech committee. I guess if we can just task or if you can task the entire committee with ensuring that, you know, our, as we go into the budget, ensuring more equitable funding allocation to, for example, Bloxton, right? I think I presented a while back on the scale of where our schools kind of fall at in terms of funding. And I know admin has shared that most of it is due to salary scales and sort of teachers, you know, switching out from one school to another. But as best as possible with the amounts of funding that we may expect or can utilize currently, just again, as best as possible, making sure that we are equitably funding our building with our budget.
You can be assured that I will be carrying that through. Yes, thank you.
All I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the Education and Technology Committee?
There's just something that I have some concerns with, and that's the lack of a library at Bloxton. The only middle school that has a library is East Norton. I had suggested or reached out to the fact that maybe we could get in touch with the library and have them bring the Norristown Library and have the bookmobile come to them. And when I was at the board meeting for the library, they said that would be fine, that it is indeed doable. So I'm wondering if we're looking into that.
I can answer that, Mrs. Worth. When we made the decision to reimagine the space over there, we wanted to not be limited by the old infrastructure in Bloxton Library. So we literally took it down to the concrete, the cinders, and rebuild it. We wanted to get our flexible seating model in there with all the intentions of making sure that we restored a book collection back in there. I just recently got working with the Corbett team who did the Flux furniture over there. We're working with Dr. Lugo, discuss some bookcase options. We just got quotes back on that we're going to be looking to move on probably next month. And then once the bookcases are in, we're going to start working with our local partners in our own budget to make sure that we fill those shelves with good, rich, rigorous text for our middle school.
Is that the definition of a library that we're going to use?
I'm sorry?
Is that the definition of a library we're going to use? Bookshelves with books does not make a library, it makes a book collection. So does that mean we will not have a library as such? With a librarian and all of the,
When was the last time we had a librarian?
I can tell you at the middle school level, we've not had a librarian since before I was with the district. And that was the decision that was made before I was in the district 8 years ago.
and I understand that that's taken place in many schools, and I've seen these collections be put under just somebody who's looking at the audiovisual. That does not make it, in my experience, a good resource. We're looking to improve reading scores. We're looking to encourage kids to read, and yet we don't have a library which says we don't value it. So can we have the bookmobile come and offer a more complete variety of books?
We certainly can connect with the bookmobile and the services they offer, Mrs. Worth. As we do in East Norriton, although we do not have a librarian there, we do rely on our teachers to give our students that full library experience with the book collection that is there, to make sure that literacy and improving the richness that a library can offer to all of our students. We'd expect to do the same while we explore those partnerships at Bloxton once we get a collection back in there.
Okay, because we either value reading and literacy or we don't. And what we do is, the action is the confirmation. So that's where my concern comes.
Thank you, Mrs. Worth.
If I can uplift one thing as well, to Mrs. Worth's point, at the Flux-based meeting for the district comprehensive plan, the students had shared with me, I had some students who attended East Norriton, I had some students who attended Bloxton and Eisenhower. The students who had attended East Norriton had shared that their teachers at East Norriton provided them with novels to read. And the students from Eisenhower and Bloxton have reflected on that and stated that they were never tasked with reading novels. So again, to the point of literacy, perhaps maybe working out in our budget if we can.
What I can say that's in your Jaramillo is, those are students that formerly went through our middle school program. The high school students that you were interacting with. And Dr. Richardson, I ask you to jump in. Our middle school literacy experience is very, very different now. I know I was with, Dr. Taylor and, Mr. Hutchinson, and will be with Dr. Lugo, I believe, in another week, do class visits, and saw all of our middle schoolers interacting with novels as part of their English language arts curriculum. Dr. Richardson, please.
That's correct. We adopted Wit and Wisdom, which is based on authentic text. So they don't have the big anthology anymore with stories in it, but they have the actual novels, and they use those for every unit. Also, at Bloxton, they have classroom libraries, and I have observed independent reading time at Bloxton when I was there.
If I recall correctly, most of our ELA courses do only in-class reading. They don't assign books to go home with kids to encourage reading at home.
For the lower levels, the classroom assignments are, the novels are mostly done in class, but they do allow them to take books home to read independently. As the students get older, they transition, and actually most of the reading is it is independent in 11th and 12th grade.
But it's in class.
In
Is it-
11th and 12th grade, no, it's not. It's independent outside of class.
Okay. Okay. I
That
got,
was most in 11th and
Yeah,
12th.
that's too late.
Yeah, well, for the independent reading, for example, I met with a 10th grade ELA teacher, and she actually taught weighted honors, and she said, I spend the first half of the year teaching them how to annotate. There are things that they're teaching them to look for in the text. And so she spends a good part of the year teaching them a lot of strategies, and then they do progress towards independent, but as the students moved along in the grades, then it mostly becomes all independent with regards to assigned text. Last week at the high school, I saw a teacher had gone to, I think, Book Smiles or something, and had brought back a bunch of novels, and every class had the ability to go and choose novels that they wanted just for pleasure. And they were excited because there were Harry Potter books in there. So a number of different things. And then I was in one class, and they are totally doing a novel independently. And he told them, remember to keep reading because we will have a quiz tomorrow.
okay, that's great to hear. It seems like not all students are having the same experience, even in weighted honors, because I spoke with some of the teachers at the high school the other day, and they do a totally different thing. And to your comment the other night about autonomy with teachers, Ms. Worth, I think this is an example where the autonomy perhaps goes a little too far, right? In the sense that we have teachers in weighted honors doing things very differently and not assigning text to go home with students, even at the high school level. So I think we need to find the balance between what our expectations are around ELA, what our goals are, and the expectations that we have of what that student experience is in ELA and how that's kind of taught.
If I just want to remind everybody, this is year one of our new English language arts curriculum and implementation. And while we're working with expediency, Mr. Daniels, we do need, again, this year one of implementation, where, as Dr. Richardson said, we are in a lot of classrooms, we're providing a lot of feedback, and there's going to be a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And I think, the feedback we're seeing, and again, trying to get consistency of programming and implementation while we're moving as quickly as we can does take time. And remember, our Wit and Wisdom was a 2-year phase, which is next year. And again, we expect to see more and more progress. And we're seeing progress, daily, weekly, monthly, as we make progress with our implementation.
But regardless of whether it was wit and wisdom or some other set of instruction or
Mhm.
curriculum, I mean, the structure, how the expectations we're setting of classes would still be an issue, right?
Mhm.
I think as we talked about when we went through the implementation, selecting wit and wisdom, the rigor that we're trying to bring to our programs is increasing. And as you talk about what that looks like in the classroom and what the expectations are going home, it needs to continue to evolve with that.
Okay.
I would, as a former English teacher, both regular ed, special ed from grades 6 through 12, I need to say that teaching reading and teaching English, if you're going to do literature and you're going to do rigor, 11th and 12th grade is too late. That needs to begin at the very latest in 6th grade. And our kids' ability to be at whatever secondary education they go to read independently, to read both fiction and nonfiction, to know the difference between propaganda and authentic research with either primary research or whatever is important, especially in today's society. So it may be year one in that particular program, but English literature has been being taught for a long, long time. And I'm concerned, we want our kids to be able to read, to have the skills to read, to pass these state tests, but are we giving them the opportunities to come up with those skills where they're proficient or beyond? And what I'm hearing is we can do better.
And I don't want to give you the impression that they only do independent reading in 11th and 12th grade. I have been in elementary classes where a teacher is working with a small group and we have other students doing independent reading in the classroom. But in 11th and 12th grade, it is all independent and they're totally on their own and they're having those Socratic seminars, which we are also seeing now moving down to middle and elementary level as well. So it's not just those upper grades. We're seeing it all the way through, but when they get to the high school, then it becomes totally independent.
And once again, I say that's kind of late to introduce it because historically it's been introduced much, much sooner than that. And people are called on to be able to be independent and do that. And the difference between reading on a screen and reading with a book in hand, research has shown reading with your book and engaging with it is much different from sitting in front of the screen. I'm just concerned that we are not providing the richest experience that our kids can have, and that I will tell you that private schools do give their students.
I will also say my son is in 8th grade and I don't think he's brought a book home this year.
Mm.
So maybe that's him. I don't think so, but so.
I just have a comment. I just want to think back to the NA Cares meeting that we had last week and the concerns that were brought up in our and one of the biggest literature that was shared by having a child in grade hasn't brought home a book as well. Class, but her literature level is about 30. And I thought that was just learn her learning, but more widespread. What that's
The one thing I just want to be very aware of, back to Mrs. Worth's comment of there is work to be done. We recognize. But please be assured that we have a plan in place. We're moving. I don't want to take it out of context that the first time kids are asked to read independently is 11th grade. That is not the case. But we certainly have gains to make. We have the curricular framework and the materials in place, I'll say fully for the first time in a long time in this district. I will share the story. When I got here 8 years ago, we had no written curriculum document. We bought programs, and there were programs that were not culturally diverse. They were not rigorous. It was a literally follow the script, scripted reading program. We then invested in a new set of materials, which took us a step forward. And again, we have to progress with that. You know, scripted programs are exactly that. They're anthology series. They're textbooks that live in the classrooms. Our next series took it a step forward. And now, like as Dr. Richardson said, wisdom is taking it to a whole nother level. And those opportunities are there. Do they need to come with greater consistencies? We're hearing they do. And those are the things we're pushing toward. But we are working at this every single day. We're optimistic as we were with last year with math, that we're going to start seeing academic achievement and growth gains that are going to be commensurate with plans we have.
And literature in the classroom looks totally different than it did 2 years ago, with foundations, with all that they're doing with foundations, learning how to read with the decodable text. Now we have every classroom that has a lot of decodable text. Those students are using those. And so it looks totally different than it does in the classroom at all levels. Last year, I was in a classroom at Marshall Street, and the students were doing ELA, and I could not believe that it was a kindergarten class because of the work that they were doing. And so our STAR assessment scores are showing the progress. It looks totally different. But as Mr. Dormer said, we do have a ways to go, but we are moving in the right direction for sure.
Mrs. Collins has a comment.
Can you speak into the mic? Yeah.
So, Mr. Dormer, you mentioned that the flex space at Bloxton was reimagined. Can you describe what the intent and purpose is for that flex space, and do those same spaces exist at Eisenhower and East Norton with the same goal?
They do, Mrs. Collins. We partnered to give the quick summation. You know, we partnered with Flex Space to make sure that we had spaces in all of our schools that were flexible, where, you know, students where a full, I'll say, STEAM experience could be imagined, where students could do more hands-on, teachers could have different seating options and all those pieces. So at our 3 middle schools and our high school, the libraries were chosen. And again, we took out really kind of the old traditional, and Bloxton's library was probably in the biggest need of a refresh. It was an old dated space with desks and chairs, and it was not a very inviting space. So if you go in there now, it has, you know, 3 or 4 spaces with combinations of workspaces, technology, well, at least one piece of technology there now, an interactive whiteboard. We have some soft seating options. We have some tall seating options, so that again, kids can kind of choose their path a little bit in terms of, and teachers can afford kids those options. But with that was to try to get that in there first, and then take steps with bringing the literacy pieces back there, finding out what the usage was going to be, and then again, tailoring that space about how could we get the best out of literacy initiatives in there. We were hopeful that I think some of the bookcase options were interesting. Some that were particularly appealing are going to be like 6 months of order that we're not going to wait on. So we're going with something that's going to be more readily available, so we can get the books back in the space more.
So the traditional role of librarian has evolved a bit. Does this space and the materials you're looking to bring into it, would that incorporate more of a media literacy, media specialist mindset as opposed to a traditional librarian? What sort of skills would students learn from the old school Dewey Decimal to how to query in Google, because they really don't know how to?
Exactly to your point there, Mrs. Collins, it has evolved, and we're trying to have a space that facilitates that evolution.
How soon then in the plans with the infrastructure being complete? When do you
It's all done. It
foresee?
was all done last year. Every school.
Except for the reading libraries, the bookcases and the book collection of blocks and all the infrastructure done.
So if I'm hearing correctly, Ms. Worth's question might be at an appropriate time to really look closer at what sort of media literacy curriculums and open choice might be available for school. Is that the point that we're at?
I think, again, where that goes forward is the space is ready for that next evolution, to answer your question.
Would that be committee or how would that be?
That would go through the Ed Tech Committee.
I would run through the Ed and Tech Committee, and I would suggest that the discussion probably needs to start at a higher level, which is what are we trying to accomplish and what's the best path forward? I actually don't think it's like trying to roll back to 30 years ago in a traditional library concept. It probably is more information sciences tied in with STEAM, right? And more sort of experiential learning. We were trying to move more sort of libraries into the classrooms, but a lot of that, again, was very voluntary at the teacher level. And I think we need to be setting the expectations for what actually needs to happen.
There's no classroom that has enough space for all of the kinds of literature, both
Yeah, and
fiction
nobody
nonfiction.
is suggesting that there is.
So
So you can still have in-classroom libraries so kids can self-select.
one
some
of the
those books.
foundations of writing is reading, because those are model texts on how to write an expository essay. All of those things, we need models. We wonder why kids are going to Chat GPT, because they don't have anything to compare it to. Not the reading, not the difference between sitting and reading Lord of the Rings versus watching the movie, or knowing the history that goes behind that. So the question is, are we creating two-dimensional learners as opposed to four-dimensional, including the imagination?
With our recently approved profile, the graduate, Mrs. Worth, no, we're not creating two-dimensional one. And to be honest, one of the things that we're going to have to start discussing is how do we teach students to responsibly use tools like ChatGPT and AI? Because it's not going anywhere.
No, it's not, but we're also not giving them the books in hand, the models, the things to see how people from their own minds wrote these amazing things or boring things. And what makes it boring? What makes it amazing?
So, Mrs. Worth, I hear loud and clear the desire to get a library, getting the book collection back in Blackstone Library. But as Mr. Daniel said, we were very intentional in making sure that temporarily those libraries went to classrooms so the students did not lose access to library materials and those authentic texts while we completed the reimagining of the space.
Well, I've watched what the librarian does at Home Manor, and there's nobody in a classroom who can vie with the librarian and her experiences and what she has the kids do. So that's, not to beat a dead horse, I'll end it there. But some of my best friends are librarians.
Thank you for your
I'll end it there.
no, thank you for your passion on the Mrs. Worth. It is not lost on anyone. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on Education Technology Committee report and related topic?
Tie it all back together. It sounds like Ed and Tech will be working together to set perhaps maybe some new set of priorities based on the visions that were uplifted, the comments, the desires that were uplifted. So perhaps maybe that'll come into a measurable that Ed and Tech will then propose to the team, I guess. Does that sound about right?
We're going to sort through a number of issues that we're reading.
Okay.
I did want to go back a little bit to with the tutoring piece. I know we also talked about not just Central Monaco, but other things in exploring how to better tie together tutoring, both as an intervention within the classroom during the classroom day, but what current resources are available that aren't being utilized as much as they could. I know we looked at some of the
Yeah, we looked at utilization rates for iTutor and it was depressingly low.
so we definitely talked about having our work cut out and that tied back to power support and some other issues within the school day. But looking to next year, what other things out perhaps outside of the school day or we need to do to improve tutoring accessibility, usage.
Yeah, I'll say that I think the accessibility is there. The accessibility is not the problem. It's available freely to every student, and that iTutor will connect them directly with somebody who does one-on-one tutoring. So the accessibility is there, but the fact is that the folks who are using iTutor are self-selecting in. They're not the ones who need the tutoring the most, right? And so in order to really accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is strong readers by fourth grade, right? We're probably going to have to change the approach to one where people aren't just self-selecting in if they want to, but where we're doing that tutoring in small group sessions. The question is, how do we, I think we have the curriculum, but how do we get enough bodies in the classroom to do that?
Any other questions, comments, discussion? All right, thank you. Dr. Richardson, and again, thank you for all your the information you shared and all the work you've done in the area of literacy and all teaching and learning. Would you please present 5.2 academic recommendation?
Yes, we have one academic recommendation for an overnight trip, and this is the robotics team to go to the VEX World Championships in Dallas, Texas, starting April the 23rd and going all the way to May 1st.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I was going to say, board members, are there any questions or comments
Oh,
on?
no, congratulations. They're awesome.
And as a little bit of a preview, I have invited Mr. Allman and our teams to join us next week for a brief presentation and recognition. So you get to learn a little bit about this year's game and just all the great things of robotics that are going on. So you'll get to see them next week.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Hearing nothing else, Mr. DeRosier, just confirming nothing tonight under 5.3 technology services recommendation.
Nothing.
We are short month, we are good. All right. 5.4 pupil services committee report. Unfortunately, Dr. Molitor sends her apologies. She's not able to attend this evening. She did send me her notes, unless anyone else from the committee would like to share a summary.
It was a very short meeting.
That was pretty much your summary. So
Yeah.
if you're okay, I'll just some of the highlights. February minutes were approved. Went over enrollment and transportation. 2 contracts are going to be recommended for approval. Communication Associates and the Lincoln Center. Under family community engagement, asking everyone to mark their calendars for April 20th. We're going to have our first district-wide Exceptional Abilities Day from 1 to 4. Dr. Molitor is going to meet with the Norristown Chamber to promote the event as well as solicit additional vendors. We have 20 vendors, agencies, and businesses taking part. That is a Saturday from 1 to 4. So please mark that. Dr. Molitor and the committee also talked about the facilities town halls. We did have our first 3 this week, 1 in person and 2 virtual. And again, I think we had some great discussion and engagement. Our 10 a.m. one was a little lightly attended, but our nighttime Zoom one, actually, we had some really good chat discussion and in-person discussion there. We had 3 more in person, the 19th, 21st, and April 2nd, and 1 more virtual session. Reminder that our spring break meal distribution will be March 20th at Davenport. And thanks to Dr. Molitor and the team with our first ever district-wide Best Buddies Day on March 7th. We asked everyone to wear their gear and just support our Best Buddies program. So how'd I do on the report?
Great.
That might have been as long as the meeting was from what I heard.
Maybe a little longer. I don't know.
And the next day and the next meeting will be April 8th. Okay. Any questions or comments on Pupil Services Committee report? 5.5 enrollment, transportation, and food service. As we do each month, they are publicly available. You can see our ridership and food service participation. I don't want to steal the thunder of facilities and finance, but we had some very good breakfast numbers that Mr. Ludwig shared. So, Mr. Daniels, I'll let you report out on those. For 5.6 pupil services recommendations, I'll just read them in short order. Again, board members will ask for your approval next week. Item A is our 1305, 1306 students. B is our 4010 student agreements. Item C is recommend payment to Belmont Behavioral Health for educational services for students in the amount of $3,000. Item D are educational service agreements with 2 students and their families. Item E is the aforementioned contract with Lincoln. And item F, again, was referenced at the Pupil Services Committee, is the contract with communication. So board members, are there any questions on item A, our 1305, 1306? Item B, our 4010. Item C, our payment to Belmont Behavioral Health. Item D, our educational service agreements. Item E, contract with Lincoln Center. Or item F, contract with Communication Associates. Hearing none, I'd like to welcome Ms. Vesta Piedra. Good evening. If you please present 5.7, Human Resources Recommendations.
Good evening, everyone. Under Section A appointments, we have 1 professional appointment up for next week for approval. Under our support staff, we have 3 appointments listed for approval. Under Section B, requested leave of absences, we have 1 leave of absence listed and no FMLA requests. Under Section C, change of status, we have 2 change of statuses for our food service department. Just some current staff that are doing a great job and they're moving up to more hours. And Section D, resignation or retirement, we do have 1 resignation listed. And next week I will add any additional hires that we might have or in our tenure if there's anyone up this month.
Thank you, Ms. Vesta Piedra. I know it's a short agenda tonight for board members. If there's any questions, we can ask them in executive session after tonight's. We'll keep it moving. Next up is 5.8 Facilities and Finance Committee Report.
Thank you. The highlights were we had a riveting presentation about public bonds from the Stifel Group. It was really exciting. So I have the presentation if anybody wants it tonight, a little bedside reading. All right. We had an update about our ongoing budget process. Note that I think we are aiming to review and approve the budget in May. Is that correct?
Oh, I think that's, obviously June.
I mean, we could do June, but we're aiming for May,
Yes,
right?
I prefer the final budget in May, so you do the proposed final budget in April and then the final budget in May because there's time after the budget is approved. You have to get the information to the tax collectors so they can print the bills. So if we're on the June cycle, that's really pushing the tax collectors to get the bills out for the July 1 new billing year. So that's why we like the May date.
But even more importantly, I think it gives our teachers and our community a level of confidence that we know what we're all signing up for next year.
Yes,
Right.
that too.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And then as part of that presentation that you walked us through, I inquired about the current budgetary impact of charter school tuition transfers. I think it's about $11 million a year. Is that right? About $11 million a year. But because we are not the authorizing district, we do not have any insight into how those dollars are spent as we do in our own district. We don't know what percentage of dollars are spent on instruction. We don't know if the IEPs are being honored as written. And we certainly don't know if the lottery process is fair to all of those who apply, if any of you have been following the news about Franklin Town Charter School. So I will be requesting similar information from the authorizing district. That's one. And if that wasn't enough, then we got to talk about PCERS, and I'll just leave it there. What did I miss?
Just one note, Mr. Daniels, that I want to thank Mr. Miller for his first budget presentation at the committee. And that at this point, although we are still trying to decipher how much of the governor's state funding proposal is going to be funded, we are committed to trying to deliver a proposed and a final budget with a 0% tax increase for the 4th consecutive. We believe there will be an increase in state revenues. And really what we're trying to figure out is how much of that money and really where can we invest that in programmatic supports and additional staffing.
Yes, just one quick note. In the governor's budget, there was for this Norristown, there was a $13 million increase to the basic education subsidy. It remains to be seen if the final budget will be $13 million, but we think there will be a significant investment in our district from the state.
Great. Anyone have any questions or comments or discussion on 5.8 Facilities and Finance Committee?
Mr. Daniels, thank you.
Sure.
I would love to see the presentation. Do you mind just highlighting?
You might regret that, but.
I'll take it on.
Or the bond presentation?
Yeah,
Bond
or- yeah,
presentation?
yeah.
Sure, I got it for you right here.
Okay.
What exactly, was it in relation to anything specifically that we are gonna be tasked with fairly soon, or?
Well, it's just, as we talk about the comprehensive plan and the facilities work that we may be
Right,
doing in the
right.
future, that would undoubtedly
Requiring this
involve
as an
going
approach.
out to a public bond issue.
Right, okay,
right?
okay.
So we're all just kind of getting our ducks in a row, if that's what we decide to do.
And that is exactly why Mr. Miller had our Stiefel, who is our bond advisor.
The underwriter, they go to
Underwriter, thank you.
market, but we have a financial advisor that's a fiduciary for the district as well. So PFM is our financial advisor. And Stifel is a bond underwriter, but Stifel works for both us and the people that buys the bonds. That's why we have a financial advisor involved as well.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. So we had them here knowing that we're moving the facility plan along. And the minute the board says we want to move, we're probably, we are going to be borrowing money to pay for a large portion of that plan. So we wanted to inform the committee about what that process would look like.
And that's really a bonds 101 kind of like, this is what bonds are,
Right,
this is what the process looks like, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I'm also excited about the new playground or the potential new playground at Musselman Learning Center. I looked over the meeting minutes. So thank you for the work being done in that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion? And actually, speaking of the Musselman Playground recommendation, we'll go to Mr. Cardwell. Good evening. 5.9 Operations and Facilities Recommendations.
Good evening, everyone. There are 3 items to speak on tonight. First one, item A, is a maintenance request. Recommend approval of a multi-year contract with GenServe for generator preventive maintenance service as presented and attached to for the cost of over 3 years, I should say study costs over 3 years of $5,236, $5,236, I need to say, each year. Any questions? Item B, renewal of an MOU with Montgomery County Office of Public Health. Recommend approval of the renewal of memorandum of understanding with Montgomery County Office of Public Health in reference to the community garden at Eisenhower Middle School as presented and attached. Item C, grant partnership agreement with Kaboom Inc. Recommend approval of agreement with Kaboom Inc. to secure grant funding and to identify a donor to fund a new playground installation at Musselman Learning Center as presented and attached.
Board members, any questions on item A, our GenServe agreement? Item B, our MOU renewal with the Office of Public Health to continue community garden in Eisenhower. We're very excited about that. And item C, and Senor Jaramillo, thank you for uplifting this. Any questions about the grant partnership agreement with Kaboom to identify a donor for, this is great, a new full playground installation at Musselman Learning. The only thing it costs the district, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cardwell, is we have a responsibility for volunteers to help with the installation in June. So if you're interested, I believe we have a 25 volunteer day, 25 volunteers, and 50 volunteers. Okay.
But you have them already?
No, we are responsible for providing 3 days of volunteers. So we need 25 on day 1, 25 on day 2, 50 on day 3. So Kaboom's going to do this, and they're going to have some site leads, and we, in essence, are going to help build our own playground.
Love that.
Can we get the date and the times for?
We're working on all those details right now.
said
Step one is we have to get the agreement signed with Kaboom. And then they're gonna notify us of who the donor is and they'll then connect us with the playground company to actually design it. The school-based team will input on what the actual design and layout is gonna be. Again, it really is a great interactive process that we work through with Kaboom.
Right, and when we get the final date, we'll work backwards. So it'll be all the dates that you're looking for to get us to that final date.
We're roughly looking at June, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe we're targeting the week after school.
June 10th. That's,
Is the
I didn't
week
want to say
before,
that loud, but June 10th.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions on? Hearing none, Mr. Miller, we'll come back to you. 5.10, financial and business services recommendations. Just want to verify we have nothing.
No recommendations for March.
Okay, and we'll stick with you for 5.11, financial reports, please.
Yes, these items I have for approval at the board meeting. I have attached treasurer's report, an investment analysis report, and budget summary of all for January 2024. I have orders to be ratified for the general fund for January 2024 in the amount of $8,396,751.34. Orders to be ratified for the food service fund for January 2024, $359,923.75. Payrolls to be ratified February 2nd and February 16th. February 2nd being $1,786,020.34. February 16th being $1,851,414.46. And approval for future payrolls of April 12th and April 26th.
Great, thank you, Mr. Miller. Board members, do you have any questions on items A, B, or C under financial report? Hearing none, we'll move on to 5.12, policy committee report. I don't know who wants to take it.
So anxious to get started. We met last Monday, March 4th at 5 p.m. We had brought back our very own Miss Mitchell to talk a little bit more about class rank. I had basically opened it up to sort of get some of the experts' opinions or their vision on what exactly would they like to see a student graduate with to make them more competitive, especially as the higher education landscape is now beginning to look at things outside of class rank. And, you know, some of the highlights were how many AP classes are being offered at the school, how many honors courses, what type of extracurriculars were the students participating in, that sort of thing. So a more holistic view of the student is essentially what they are they're interested in. So again, making that story about the student more marketable to that institution. We had also did a little bit more work on policy 004, which is the membership. We had included some additional training opportunities for board members. We had put into the policy some of the I guess procedures that we had taken amongst ourselves in terms of vacancies and appointments. Policy number 903, public participation. That was a change that came from PSBA in response to some recent legal rulings. And am I missing anything? Oh, the resolutions for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging presented to us by our very own Mr. Willis. Thank you, Mr. Willis, for that work. In addition to a resolution for Black History Month. Those will be I believe those are all the items that will be up for board approval next Monday. Am I missing anything, Mr. Thorne?
Nope.
Mr. Willis, did I miss Tanya? Making sure. Board members, any questions about any of the policies and or resolutions that will be presented to us for vote next Monday?
Thank you, Senior Jaramillo. With that, move on to 5.13 policy recommendations. Mr. Willis, if you just want to review two policies up for first read tonight.
Yes, thank you and good evening. We do have two policies, as Senior Jaramillo mentioned, that were discussed last week and are up for first read this week. It is policy 004 with membership and policy 903, public participation at board meetings.
Board members, if there are any questions tonight about those, we can field them. Please take time to read them. We do have the ability between now and second read next week. If there's anything that needs to be tweaked or adjusted. Any questions, comments on the two policies that are recommended? And as Senior Jaramillo indicated, the two resolutions will be up under 6.3 board recommendation. Hearing none, Senior Jaramillo, that concludes agenda item number 5, committee reports and recommendations of the superintendent.
Salud.
Board members, please expect everything reviewed tonight to be on the regular voting meeting agenda next week for your consideration. And the cabinet members will be sure to highlight any additions or changes to tonight's agenda for next week so that you can properly deliberate and approve. So with that, Senior Jaramillo, I turn the meeting back over to you.
Gracias. Thank you, Mr. Dormer, for leading us through that. Thank you for the admin team members who had given their presentations. Kicking it off with 6.1 board announcements. Do we have any board announcements? Going once, going twice? No? Okay. All right, we'll dive into collateral assignments then. We'll be touching on JOC, MCIU, and PSBA reports. Let me pull up my notes. Okay, so JOC had met the 6th of March, this last week. We had received an update from facilities. They will be undergoing a parking lot redesign to address potholes, hydrostatic pressure, and other issues related to safety and accessibility that have risen in the past, probably past couple weeks, months, I think.
Years.
Yeah.
It's years. They've known. I was on the committee meeting, so I was there. I wasn't able to attend the JOC that night, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Curriculum committee, an update from the curriculum committee. Building trades has implemented the core curriculum, CORE, which is the National Center for Construction Education and Research, or NCCER, which is a nationally recognized leader in construction education, training, and certification. A slight change to the teacher academy that will now be called the Secondary Education Academy and will now be a 2-year program for 11th and 12th grade students who want to teach upper elementary grades through 12th grade. So we definitely want to market that to some of our own students here in Norristown, especially that addressing the Grow Your Own pipeline. Exercise science and rehabilitation therapy will be moving to a 3-year format to incorporate students from 10th grade through 12th grade. And we're expecting an increased enrollment possibility for students from descending schools. The last point that I want to bring up is we received a finance report. So looking at the 2024-2025 budget, it's expected to be $11,051,027, which is actually a 3.88% decrease from last year. And that's largely due to 2 of the 3 capital improvements being completed and the debt services being paid. So I just want to prepare our JOC team moving into April. Since I have officially resigned and I prepared Dr. King, we'll be welcoming Ms. Collins to take my role. So I highly encourage Madam Vice President, Ms. Parker, and Mr. Daniels to please support her, get up to speed. Just, whatever's needed. I'm sure she has a lot to contribute already, so. MCIU report, Ms. Smock.
Thank you. We had our MCIU board meeting on Wednesday, February 28th. The first part of the meeting was a report from the Office of Facilities and Operations. They support the entire MCIU with a service request ticketing system, FMX. This system allows the employees to request those vital services listed below. An example is they've had work order requests, 2,650 were submitted, 78% are completed, 12% are waiting on supplies, 9% are open, and remaining 1% is just something else has to happen before that service can go into effect. They redid the lobby and security command room renovations at the 2 West Lafayette. If you've been familiar with that, when you enter, it was very closed and not welcoming, and now it's very open and very welcoming and much more secure security cameras for the front desk to work on. The 375 Morris Road full renovation and construction update. Its anticipated completion will be in August of 2024. The Human Resources Office improvements are planned for summer of 2024. And the warehouse is 1605 Main Street. The renovations are planned for the warehouse this summer. They plan to make that into additional space for students for the Early Learning Academy. Dr. Speaker's report included a presentation from Barkane Thornton and Company, a CPA firm, with our annual audit report, and it was a satisfactory audit. We approved the renewal of the contract for Mr. Jack Hurd for our assistant director position, and it was announced that Rebecca Fogel will be retiring. She is the director of patent, and she'll be retiring at the end of this school year. And we had the other usual, approvals of all the bills, so. And that is it.
Thank you, Ms. Mock. Going over to PSBA report, there's no report this month. Legislative report, Ms. Stormer, did you want to?
Legislatively, the Senate and House are in the process of holding their appropriation committees, their appropriation meetings. The Secretary Momin and his team has now had his hearings with both the Senate and House. Not unsurprising, they were long, detailed, and I dare even say somewhat contentious. So a lot of interesting probing on the governor's budget proposal, the sustainability of that, not only in year one, but over the commission's report of a 7-year implementation, and any and all things in between of that. So the only optimism I will have for an on-time budget, it is an election year, and I don't think that House and Senate members are going to risk a delayed budget that are going to impact their races come this fall. Because if you pay attention to state politics, I think it's going to be, there may be a few more than usual competitive races statewide. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Mr. Dormer. Jumping over to NAEF, any update or?
Yeah, Dr. D'Antonio gave an update during the Facilities and Finance meeting. NAEF is currently sort of reconstituting itself, I guess is that, I think that's a word. We just verbified that, all right. So the board is being identified. Actually, I think the board has been identified, and the first board meeting is April 30th. NAEF has approximately $33,000 in the bank and is already planning a series of fundraisers and is actively applying to grants. I think this is going to be a huge asset and long overdue for to provide another sort of funding pipeline for important district priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jumping into board recommendations, there's a couple items under board recommendations. We'll begin with item A, approval of the district comprehensive plan, the induction plan, the professional development plan, and the gifted assurances plan. Item B, which is the Black History Month resolution. I had highlighted B and C previously in the policy committee report. Item C, the NASD inclusionary resolution. Item D, appointment of our JOC representative, Ms. Collins, to replace my previous role. And lastly, the motion to amend overnight travel for assistant superintendent. Board members, any questions on item A, B, C, D, or E? No? Okay. All right, we'll transition to public comment. Do we have any folks out there in the world who would like to? No? Going once, going twice. All right. All right, I make a, can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. We are adjourned.
Board members, you can stay for a very brief, executive session.